Development Committee and all these other committees. His statement on his website recognizes that the Pentagon composes a major portion of the budget, and that while New York has a lot of jobs in the defense industry, he says, I believe that we have to decide upon a level of defense spending that is appropriate in light of recent shocks to our economy. Maintaining our national security is a primary mission of the federal government. The social programs cannot make all the sacrifices. And then, how do you pronounce his name, Mafi?
Mafe.
Mafe? I had a meeting with him the day the government shut down, and then, so it's been postponed to later this month. So he's on the Armed Services Committee, and these are different subcommittees, the emerging threats and capabilities, tactical air of these committees. He voted against the House bill that would have defunded the Affordable Care Act. He voted against the very, very horrible House bill that was going to cut $40 billion from food stamps and kick billions of people and children off of the program. He voted to cut war funding by $3.5 billion in an earlier defense authorization bill this year. So that was good. He says on Syria, our intentions may be good, but humanitarian bombing just doesn't make sense to me. I'm glad the administration is trying to work out something on a diplomatic level. And he also successfully lobbied his colleagues in the House to restore funding for a missile defense project that employed hundreds of central New Yorkers at Lockheed Martin and Salina, creating more jobs, and quote, creating more jobs and protecting hardworking central New York families are my top priorities. Mafe said in a statement after the vote, I will continue to do everything I can to advocate for needs and other programs that are critical to defending our nation and support good-paying jobs in central New York. So with that intel, what I would say if I was to call up the office would be that I would give him information about the chart I just showed you about the Pentagon being the least effective tool for job creation. And then SCNL also has some resources on economic diversification and just making the point too that we need to, we want to diversify local economies. You don't want your economy to be dependent on one industry, regardless of what it is, and especially not the defense industry, which is dependent on whether we're at war or not. Also some district-specific data on poverty. So the child poverty rate here is very high at 24%. I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were redistricted recently. So 24% is higher than the national average. 16% of women in this district live in poverty, which is also higher than the national average. 53% of African Americans in the district live in poverty. 37% of Asian Americans live in poverty. 47% of Latinos live in poverty. And the numbers in the thousands are there too. And this comes from, this would be, this comes from the recent census, 2012. Well, since they are hopefully going to pass a bill tonight, I would say, tweak this a little bit and say, I can't say how important it is to call up your member of Congress or write a letter or send an email or go into an office if you can and let them know that these are issues you care about. They really do care. I spent all day lobbying on the Hill yesterday. I had from 9 to 5 back-to-back meetings with mostly moderate Republicans in the House, and they kept telling me we need to hear from people in our district. Because a lot of times they're hearing from big business, from defense contractors, and they're not hearing enough from people on our side. So, and I just like to end with a quote from Martin Luther King's Beyond Vietnam speech, 1967, when he says, "I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor, so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw men and skills and money, like some demonic destructive Section 2. So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and to attack it as such. He goes on later in that speech to talk about how we really, as long as we continue to spend money on the military, we won't make investments in those programs of social uplift, and it's very important that we do. Thank you.
You said the budget hasn't been passed in 4 years. In your opinion, why do you think it's?
I think it has to do because the House and the Senate can't agree on much, and when you're, I think, on an ideological level, they're coming from two very different, ideologically different places, and then it's hard to make a policy that reflects that. So you're having the Tea Party wing of the Republican Party moved the conversation and the middle kind of really far right. So you're having now conversations that already start a little bit right of center, and then it becomes a discussion of really, really far right and then right of center. And so it becomes hard to go across party lines when you have that.
And what hope do we have with them meeting if they do vote to, lift the debt ceiling and all of that, and get that by some time? What hope do we have that they're going to actually sit down and move us forward and form the next state?
Well, I think that this time around, this has been really bad because it's not novel. Like we did this in 2011, and it's happening now, and it's not good. And hopefully, they'll see that come January and the time in between, that there needs to be a path out of this, so we're not in the same spot. And what I hear, at least in a lot of visits I've gone at, everybody tells me they want to get back to regular order. They want to pass a budget. They have the desire to govern properly, but yeah.
I'm curious, some of those Tea Party folks are very concerned about deficits and very non-interventionist in their foreign policy approach. Have you found any traction in working with people of that belief on cutting military spending?
Well, I don't know if I will say Tea Party specifically. There are, one of the biggest supporters of big cuts in military spending is Senator Tom Coburn, and he's a very, very conservative senator. But then again, he wants to cut military spending, but he also wants to cut everything else as well. But a lot of times, when we're like what I was saying earlier, we see members who want to cut everything except the Pentagon. So it becomes kind of strange because they're saying, oh, sequestration is good. It's good when it cuts, the domestic and international human needs programs, assistance programs, but it's horrible when it cuts the military. So it becomes a little bit ironic and strange.
Is there any hope about increasing taxes for the rich?
Honestly, this year, before the end of the year, no, there have been plans. Like if you'd asked me 3 months ago, the Finance Committee had plans to do a tax overhaul and do big tax reform come December, but it's not going to happen. And honestly, it would be contentious because whatever the Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committee in the House would do would be in competition with these broader deal packages. And there's only so few tax reform revenue increasing, producing tax form that some Republicans will accept. So it's better if we get this broader deal and then work on tax reform later.
Also, why is Obama late in getting a budget together?
Well, I can't answer. I don't know. He couldn't answer.
Is that typical?
I mean, it's typical to be a couple weeks late, but nothing is typical in his cycle. So it's comes just like, I guess it is typical. Past 4 years, it's been that way. This year was really, really late though, so it started the process off pretty late. But he also, we just went into sequestration on March 1st, so he was supposed to have a budget in February, but there were also other issues coming up. So.
Do you see a chance that this lack of activity will reflect in the polls in the election? Will the Tea Party or the Republicans suffer for this, or will they effectively transfer the blame to other places?
You know, I've thought about that a lot. I don't know. I've heard that the Congress's approval rate has fallen drastically, so I couldn't imagine that it wouldn't affect the election cycle. But I don't know. It's, who knows?
It can change so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it changes all the time.
So it seems like while we're getting lost talking about sequestration and the debt limit and these things, we're not talking about the real problems of lowering taxes where they're not paying for the government we have as a strategy to maybe cut the government. When are we going to start talking about this is how you balance the taxes and spending? Just what are the do we put our money in domestic things? Do we put our money in the Pentagon? And how much does it take to pay for it? And let's instead of getting lost on these sort of things that really obscure the issues really are.
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Well, are we going to are they going to start having a budget and having to face the hard questions of, okay, how much can we spend on the budget?
I think they are having those conversations. I do think now with this bill that they're voting on tonight, that they don't want to go into another year of this like budget mess. And so when they are going to appoint, the House and the Senate to both have budgets available that they passed this year, which was the Senate passed its first budget in 4 years. The House has passed budgets, the Ryan budgets, they've been passing them, but they never make it to the Senate. But this year, both the House and the Senate were able to pass a budget. So what they need to do now is to go to conference on those budgets, and then hopefully maybe we'll have a budget. So the steps, it's just very out of whack, but the steps are being taken to get there. It's just taking a while, and the process is all out of order. But I mean, there are members who, like I said, all they want to do is go back to regular order. So you have members of Congress who are writing budget proposals all the time saying, like Senator Levin from Michigan, he's come up with a thing that's all taxes. It's no spending cuts to military or domestic spending. It's just $1 trillion in revenues. Senator Murray from Washington State, who's the chair of the Budget Committee, her budget plan was, some cuts to Pentagon, some revenue, some investments, and so there's proposals out there.
Seems like I heard somewhere that there was no provision in the government for a standing army after the army was used in a war.
is,
I'm not familiar.